Welcome back. My next guest is Nestor Aparicio, doing great things here in Baltimore. Positive 1570 AM WNST.net. Nestor, welcome in.
Dennis, how are you? It's been it's been quite a week. That's all I'll say. Orioles playoffs, Ravens, skies falling, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, London.
Oh,
It's dogs and cats when I'm at the baseball ballpark twice a week, and the football team's not going to be home for a month. And everywhere I go, nobody asked me about the football team. I was at the Orioles game on Wednesday night when we thought they were going to clinch, thought it was clinchmas, and the Red Sox didn't help me out. I did have a guy come up to me in the midst of all this. I'm decked out in orange and it's all oranged up. And guy comes up, he's like, "I'm worried about the injuries, man. I'm worried about the injuries." And I'm like, "You should be. So's John Harbaugh." I would say at this point. I mean, this is let's say bad luck with the franchise because I think that's probably being too kind to them. That they have an injury issue as a franchise, right? Like I don't, and I know it's not because Harbaugh's practicing them too much because he'd love to run them ragged, but it's uncanny that we're 4 weeks into this, and if we're going to talk about the team, anything we're going to talk about with Lamar, Monken, the pass rush, the secondary, all of it is really this isn't their real team, right? And it's week 4 and they're not playing their real team.
oh what's odd, and you can see the stark contrast when they're facing these other teams, is that the other team's injury report, you have 2 or 3 players. That's it. We have 7 starters. We had 7 starters out against the Colts, not including J.K. Dobbins, who was lost for the season. So the Colts had 2 or 3 guys out. We've got over a half a dozen guys out. So I don't know what it is. Um, they've had players like Ronnie Stanley, who's got a history of being injured, and there's an old adage: once injured, always injured. But it
Well, they
wasn't.
also have some ex-players that were scheming up to sue the old trainer, right? Like 'cause they didn't they have popped off that he cost them their career, right?
eh, Maybe, but again, I don't know.
But that's players popping off. I'm just saying there's been an unusual amount of injuries in their building, and I don't know whether there's any real reason for that or just bad luck. I don't know.
Well, at some point you hope they would have good luck when it comes to injuries, but that doesn't seem the case. We go back to when Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters went down on not contact injuries in practice, right? So they weren't even hitting anybody. So you tell me the last time you heard of that happening. There's something strange going on at the Castle. We haven't figured out yet. They haven't figured out yet, but I was at the game Sunday, and man, you talk about finding ways to lose a game. They found every single way to lose that game, Nestor. You run the quarterback a dozen times in 70 minutes, but with 33, you don't run him twice to pick up a first down to win the game.
For me, the strangeness of all of it is, aside from the injuries and where they are, I really look. I Harbaugh's integrity. You can go read how I've been treated word for word, and you can figure out whether he has integrity or not. Like you can watch the press conferences. You can hear their press conferences like Marlon Humphrey will be back soon. Ronnie Stanley will be back whenever. All of it's vague. All of it really. And I talked to I have Christian Horton from Hollywood Casino Perryville. I don't know if you know this, Dennis, but you can bet legally now in sports. It's true. It's a new thing that they have that's available. It's not just point spreads like we've done here for 32 years, but I'm actually picking games, right? So I was at one point very cocky after last Thursday. I was 21, 10, and 2 against the spread. And
Oh,
then
there
I
you
took a
go.
dump into 1 o'clock games last Sunday. But the fact that we're gambling on these games and these injury reports come out and that there's some level of honor expected amongst the gamblers, right?
Sure, sure there
Like,
is.
and I don't think there's any honor at all about any of that. But I do find it fascinating that I think of John Harbaugh as being a really good coach, right? And I think over 16 years, I've seen this movie, right? Everything's bad, everything's awful, nobody's playing. We got to go on the road
Got
3 weeks in a row. This is where John Harbaugh shines usually, right? This is usually where it looks the road looks tough and it's not going to be pretty the way we're going to win. It's never pretty. They'll win 13-12 on the road in Cleveland or so, like they'll find a way to win this kind of game against this kind of franchise. And that's when I talked to Christian about it, I'm like, look, I can urinate and defecate upon John Harbaugh all day long for personal slights. He didn't lose games in Cleveland like this. They're never 2-3. They're never upside down ever. So the notion that this looks difficult, and it looks difficult, like they're not the better team going into Cleveland without 7 starters this week. Next week, Pittsburgh, you tell me, and then going to London, that's always a
Mm.
crapshoot. I mean, these are 3 wildly not good road games right now at this time in the year where they're not playing with their best players. And meantime, the baseball team's all we can talk about around here because they're about to play the most significant games they played in this generation next weekend. And I am of the mindset that if I'm gambling and I'm sitting here taking my Hollywood casino numbers, they're like, how do I bet against John Harbaugh at this point? Back's against the wall. Everybody's hurt. This is probably where he does his best work.
Oh, he always has. And guys like him and Bill Belichick are old school. They're not going to give too much to anyone, particularly the media. And they can care less about the point spread. They're just trying to win a ball game. Bill Belichick is trying to cement his legacy as the greatest coach of all time. And John Harbaugh is trying to get into the Hall of Fame himself. So they're trying to win the next ball game. That's the most important thing. And it should be the most important thing for these guys. But it was encouraging to have guys like Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum and Marcus Williams out of nowhere practicing again. If they can get those guys back plus Gus Edwards, they have a shot against the Browns. But now the Browns have Jimmy Schwartz, right? A local guy running that defense. That defense looks very legitimate.
I actually spoke to Jim's wife,
Oh,
Kathy,
very
of
nice.
Arbutus this week on the interwebs. It was her birthday.
Very good.
Yeah, that defense worries me without Linderbaum and without Stanley, right? Like Myles Garrett, who's going to neutralize him? And neutralizing him is Lamar will take off running, right? Like that's what they know. That's what they revert back to. That's probably what Todd Monken's going to revert back to, except when it's 3rd and 3 and the quarterback, they don't want him running.
No,
They
but
really don't want him running. They've spent 9 months and
I hear you.
$260 million telling him not to run. And it's their best play. Sometimes it's their only play. It certainly felt that way in the 3rd quarter last week.
But they didn't run him when they should have ran him, Nestor. I mean, whether he bailed or whether it was his design run play, they should have ran him late in the game. When the game's on the line, that's when you want Lamar Jackson taking off with the ball. You can justify it. And this was
Can you justify him getting a forearm shiver on 3rd and 4 and getting his bell rung and being out 3 weeks because of a concussion? I don't know.
That could happen on any play. That could happen on any play. My point is, I'd rather him attack the line of scrimmage than versus risk him sitting back in the pocket and risking throwing the ball behind the receiver or having his receiver tackled and the referee just eating the flag, right, swallowing the flag as we saw. But that was when Gardner Minshew stepped out of the end zone for that 2-point safety. We all thought the game was over.
The game should. I tweeted out, pack up the Mayflowers and send these losers back to Indianapolis.
Man, yes, you did. And it was awful because everyone at the stadium, everyone watching at home thought the game was done, and it wasn't done. It was one of the worst losses I've ever been a part of in terms of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
I don't disagree with that, and I know how you feel about the Colts. If they had Seahawks sweaters on or Rams sweaters, you might not have felt so bad about it.
Of all the teams, of all the franchises, it had to be those stinking Colts.
Well, this is where they lose a game they shouldn't have lost, and we could be here talking about a 3-0 team right now, and there'd be nothing to pick apart other than the injuries themselves, right? But in the case of Lamar, they watched him play electronic football for 2.5 years. They got this thing where they had players around him like Willie Snead that wanted to block, and they got Ronnie Stanley back last year. They get their sea legs. But the biggest nightmare the night he was drafted, Dennis, and I go back 5-6 years to this, right? The night that I saw him with Luke from the upper deck in that tin can out in Canton, Ohio at the Hall of Fame game, and watched him aggressively run into linebackers after watching Joe Flacco back up for 10 years, right? And my thought was always they're going to break him in half. He's seeking contact. That does not compute to me, not as a journalist, a football fan, football owner, the guy investing in the team, whatever it would be. It's against the grain of how the game is played. It's like against the grain of how the game is played. And jump out of airplanes and you're you jump out one time the
No.
parachute's not going to open. At some point, it's not going to open. And the case of Lamar, we're now 5-6 years into this. He's got his money. Forget all the off the field stuff. Doesn't take a shot, gets COVID. We played football games on Wednesday, doesn't show up for minicamp. Coach texts me pissed off, holds out, holding signs up on national TV, pay me, all of this. He hasn't played a game in November or December, a meaningful game, in 3 seasons. And it's September the 20th, and you want him running in the linebackers because it's the fourth quarter and the
Absolutely.
game's on the line.
Absolutely.
Well, right. And because we pay him $50 million a year, but you're not thinking like they were thinking all along that he's fragile. That if he breaks,
well, it's not a matter. It's not a matter of him being.
But that's
fragile,
always
Nestor.
there, Dennis. That's at the back of their mind.
It has nothing to do with him being fragile. Look at the Ravens' top 3 running backs. Dobbins out for the year, injured. Edwards, concussion protocol. Justice Hill out. So when running backs,
hold on a second. Maybe you're thinking I'm being disrespectful by calling him fragile. Maybe that's the wrong
not at all.
word.
Not at all.
The word isn't that he gets hurt injured easily. The word is he's a quarterback running into linebackers. That for Cam Newton, Steve McNair, any of those guys.
I disagree with you.
That had their careers cut short because of it.
When you're running backs who are attacking, right? They're not sitting back in the pocket getting hit. When they're getting hurt, it's common sense that the quarterback's going to get hurt eventually, right? So he's been hurt, like you mentioned. He hasn't played ball in November, December. He's got to be healthy. He's got to be upright. But my point is, when you have situational football that begs, when you have a mobile quarterback, whether it's Jackson or Jalen Hurts or even Patrick Mahomes, you can roll him out, give him a run pass option. Not the end of the world, but give your guy, utilize his talents when you're trying to win a doggone game. When you're got 30 seconds to play.
When the game's on the line, you take your chances that Lamar's going to get hit.
I'm not saying that he runs the linebackers every play. Look, I'd rather him had not run 12 times before that situation, right?
I know you'd rather have me in the post-game press conference asking why he ran 12 times. Because no other quarterback runs like this. No other franchise. Dennis, this is stupid. I don't know what else to say. He's been injured the last 2 years. They paid him his bag of money, and now everything in their mind is, we can't get him injured. Well, if you can't get him injured, don't have him run the football.
Right.
And then if he doesn't run the football, Dennis is going to be pissed that he doesn't run the football because he lost his bet, or they lost the game, or they should have won the game. But then I say, well, don't get him hurt. Don't get him hurt. I mean, at the end of the day, everything about that building is don't get him hurt. Don't get him hurt. Don't get him hurt. That's literally the way they
can't play.
Live.
You can't. That's where you get hurt. Though when you're playing scared, that's when you get hurt. You can't play not to lose. You can't play not to get hurt. Got to give it your all. You have to have an attack mindset. And look, let's see what happens when he gets his offensive line back intact. And in all fairness, Sam Mustipher was as advertised by Bears fans. He was horrible. He did a great job against DJ Reader from the Bengals, but he did a terrible job against that Colts defensive front. Patrick McCary was a turnstile left tackle. That didn't work out. So if you get Stanley and Linderbaum back in there, I do think that changes the equation for the Ravens offense, particularly Lamar Jackson. When he's confident, he can set his feet and make his reads and throw the ball down the field.
I agree wholeheartedly. Who's running the football for them the next 13 weeks?
Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake.
Okay, until they get hurt.
And then they'll have Mitchell, the kid Mitchell, in week number 5.
Well, he might be the answer.
Maybe said the farmer, but look, they'll get the guys back.
At some point, we could talk about the offensive line, and I'm with you. Without Linderbaum, without Stanley. They're not. No. Over the next 14 weeks, if they have to play without both of them, no good. So they're gonna get back on the field. That's gonna be fine. Then they're gonna have to develop this running game that was meant for J.K. Dobbins, a healthy Beckham, a healthy Bateman, all the wide receivers, all the flavors in the first-round draft picks, the offensive line, the veteran offensive line, the quarterback who we're going to coach up now after 10 years of of college and pro football, and we're going to turn him into something that nobody ever wanted to turn him into because they didn't think he could do it. When there's people in his face and the pocket's breaking down and he's still and patting the ball and trying to find Zay Flowers moving and trying to avoid a 320-pound guy breathing on him, the throw's a little late. And that's not Lamar's fault. That's true of every quarterback in the history of the game. That's not Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. And those guys never dealt with that pressure. The reason Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were so great is they got rid of the ball before they had to deal with any of that. Because once all of that happens, nobody's any good. John Elway's not all that great, and they're getting hacked on. Like, so him being in the pocket, trapped, I don't say trapped because you're either going to run or you're going to throw. If he's looking to throw, he's not looking to run. He always looked to run. They've had to unprogram him looking to run.
Taking it off, yes.
And
how about during his presser, somebody asked him about him throwing behind his receivers, and he was like shocked. He was surprised.
It was almost like I was in the press conference because that's the look he gave me.
That's a great question.
I looked at it. I said to him that that second to last question I ever asked him after that Minnesota game, and I thought, Dennis, I'm a freaking old school ham and egg reporter with a notebook, right? Like I did this at high school games at over EVT and Overly 30, 40 years ago. You just ask a question, like an obvious question, not something that John Harbaugh, he's all neck all gets all. They both got pissed at me that day. He ran the ball 21 times in an overtime game, and they had to play 4 days later. What kind of journalist am I if I don't ask that question?
Right.
Hey, like, and it wasn't a, hey, you ran him 21 times, he's going to get hurt. That wasn't the question. The question was, is that sustainable?
Yeah, of course.
Lamar ran the ball 21 times today. I expected John to say, I don't really want him running that much, but we won the game. We did what we needed to do to win the game. We don't have any plan to run him 21 times. Did he run it 21? That's probably too much. Like, John could have just said that and walked off. Instead, he took the piss with me, and I asked Lamar about it. And when I asked Lamar about it, his immaturity is on display as a human. His immaturity is on display. The pounding of the ground, everything about him screams immature to me. And I've talked about this. The way Chad Steele hides him, the way you can't talk to him, the way you can't interview him, the way he cut the Rolling Stone interview off the minute they started talking about race, politics, Kodak Black, all of these things, right? He's not a real mature guy, and I don't know that he's gaining maturity around him the way Ray Lewis had Shannon Sharp and Rod Woodson teaching him how to be a man. And I think there was a little bit of that with Mark Ingram and Big Truss a couple years ago.
Calais Campbell in the locker room helped, I think.
If Odell Beckham's that guy, I don't know. But he's got all the money in the world now. But when I ask him, as a 23-year-old man running the ball 21 times as a quarterback in the NFL, I said, Lamar, you ran the ball 21 times today. And I couched it in a nice way. And he looked at me with disdain. He's like, I didn't run the ball 21 times last week, did I? I'm like, that sounds like something like my 8-year-old would say. Like, that has nothing to do with the question. So you can't ask. I mean, you saw what Lamar looked like when you talked to Lamar about throwing behind receivers.
Right.
You can't ask me that. Chad, he asked me a real question.
He was surprised. I don't think he was aware. So hopefully he saw some game film this week and saw that he was in fact late with some of his throws. Not all of his throws, certainly, but there was a handful of throws he was behind the receiver.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's duress in the pocket. Yeah. It's sort of a new thing for him. He hasn't stood in there ever and had to do that. That this is something that they're working on with him. If he's ever really good at it, he would have been a higher draft pick. And if this is the way they're going to play, and I've talked about it for 8 months, he's going to need to be more accurate, and they're going to need to protect him better, and they're going to need better down and distance, and they're going to need wide receivers to catch the ball when he gets it there. Because that was a problem last year for Tyler Huntley, delivering the ball and having guys drop it. They still would have been playing in January last year if they just caught a couple of Tyler Huntley's passes, right? So everything about wide receivers, and I always say this about their egos, and I saw Chad Ochocinco in Cincinnati the other night, like, the egotistical part of this. So many things have to go right for Odell Beckham to be a star or Zay Flowers to be a star. Not Zay Flowers. He needs to get space off the line and beat somebody, but long passes. They want to go vertical. They need better protection, better route running, a more impressive, respected running game.
Did you see a long pass by the Ravens offense this past Sunday? Because
he doesn't have time.
Didn't. Yeah, you know what? But still, he had some time. There were the culture playing their safeties deep. You still got to take a shot. There's a thing called pass interference if your receiver doesn't catch the ball. He threw one deep to Zay Flowers a week before in double coverage, and Flowers came down with it. You got to still take shots. You just can't say it was a great pass and a great catch. My point is, just because they're in a too deep zone doesn't mean that you ignore the long ball. This is where I challenge a guy like Monken and Harbaugh. Challenge them deep, spread the field, make trying to make a play, try to draw pass interference. But this dink and dunk offense, whatever, that leads to turnovers. I mean, they turned the ball over 4 times, recovered 2 of them. That's why they lost the game.
Well, and the ball was wet too. Field was wet. I mean, allows you to be the better team and not be the better team. But Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, in London, I do not expect them to come home 2-4. Like I don't
not
expect
at all.
Them,
but I'll give you this too, and I've been saying this since day one, having watched Lamar Jackson his entire career. He's not a good inclement weather quarterback. He likes dry, warm weather. Cold weather, damp weather, that's not him. Not his game. Doesn't want to be out there. Not comfortable being out there.
Well, he's a kid who ran around all of his life in 85 degrees, right? Like he's a Florida kid. So that I don't like it either, and I grew up here. But I mean, playing well in it, he has no experience playing in it to play well in it.
He'll do his best work in a dry climate, and in a dome. So I don't know how many of these games we have coming up are in domes and in warm weather, but the AFC North's the wrong division to have a quarterback who doesn't play well in inclement weather. I mean,
Remember when you loved Joe because he had big hands, he could throw the football, hold on to the ball.
Big hands help. I mean, you don't want to have little tiny dinosaur hands. You want those big hands.
Well, Lamar's not a small guy. I mean, Lamar looks small next to Ronnie Stanley, but he's not a small guy.
No, he's not a small guy.
Not a guy you want running.
Not at all. Not at all. But Tom Brady was a great snowy, inclement weather quarterback. Now, all the warts that they had up there in New England, but that guy he
well, you know what big. He did before the game. I don't know if you know about this. Before the game, he got to the footballs,
made him easier to grip, and
took a little bit. Yeah,
that's true too.
That's really what happened.
It's true too.
Well, the story of the footballs is I talked about this a couple weeks ago with somebody. The story of the footballs really they never fumbled. When you take the air out of
it took Bernard Pollard to knock out Stephen Ridley. Yeah.
There's no question. If you look back at the Patriots run and how filthy it was, the ball, they never fumbled the ball at home.
Never. Ever.
The story wasn't about Tom Brady gripping the ball. The story was about running backs not fumbling the ball.
This is very true. 100% correct.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of Tom Brady and cheating. Is he still retired? What's Peyton Manning doing? I haven't heard from him lately.
I don't know, podcast. I don't know what he's doing. Making commercials, doing great things out there.
I saw Giselle popped up last weekend on the news trying to do damage control and do all that. But
whatever.
Listen, the Ravens as constructed, I still am a believer that they can be a playoff team like the Orioles. But that being said, they got to get healthy. I mean, if they're going to play with the team they played with last week around Lamar, first Lamar's going to get hurt. Lamar will get hurt. If Lamar's going to run the ball the way Lamar ran it 19 and 20, if he's going to run the ball 10, 12, 15 times a game because they have to, because they need to, because it's a close game, because in your mind, it's 3rd and 3, run Lamar. They can run Lamar every play. It's their best play. And that's really what I gathered out of it in the third quarter last week when they were in a ropey game at home. Passing wasn't working. Ball was wet. Run Lamar. We don't want to run Lamar a lot, but we got to win today. Run Lamar. Same thing they thought about Minnesota a year and a half ago and then didn't see him the rest of the year. So this run Lamar into linebackers, I will go back to the original sin of the night they drafted him. And everybody's saying, well, he's got to throw the ball better. He's got to be a pocket guy. He's got to stand in the – I don't want to say he can't. I just don't think it's their best chance to win, and it's not their best chance to keep him healthy, and it's not their best chance to move the offense down the field with him trying to navigate problems in front of him while wide receivers are down the field, while he's trying to hit guys in stride. I don't see that as his strength, nor did 31 other NFL general managers. Like literally, the rest of the league, it's not Nestor being a jerk. The rest of the league had a chance to bring him in and say, we're going to play this style of game. And none of them wanted it because they're afraid of him getting hurt. They really are. They're not afraid that he stinks. He might if he has to play as a drop back quarterback. And if you tie his legs together and say, you cannot run more than 5 times a game. Like we're just not. And if you do that, he's a middle quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's not a great passing quarterback. So the legs part of him is what makes him special. You can't take that away from him, but you can't take away the linebacker's ability to hit him either. And he's going to get hit. I mean, how about the guy doing special sauce on him, on his ankle, and nobody coming over and punching him in the face?
Yeah. Bad look for the Ravens all the way.
Where's
And
Ryan Jensen? Is he still in Tampa? He wouldn't have put up with that.
he's hurt again, unfortunately. Good, really good guy. But Nestor, as always, I appreciate your time. Keep doing great things on Baltimore Positive. All great stuff. Love all the stuff that you post online.
Dennis, the next time we get together, it'll be something magic happened.
There we go.
Well,
Every time you go.
I feel really dirty. I haven't talked enough football this week, so I really appreciate you for giving me a chance to denigrate Lamar. I'm not denigrating Lamar. Lamar shouldn't be running in the linebackers, and that's a problem for me. Other than that, I think they can win in Cleveland this week. But this is a tough game. This is the tougher of the three. I mean, they'll prove something to me if they win this week.
All right. Well, defense travels well, so go Roquan Smith and the Ravens. With that, we'll take our next break here on 1570 AM WNST. We'll be back right after this.